Assassin's Creed is one of the most popular franchises of the last 15 years, but it suffers from a massive problem. I'm Mark from Digital Dissection, the overweight dude in the jumpsuit, and today we're going to honestly review where Assassin's Creed went wrong. Before we take a leap of faith though, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new videos and pop culture content on this channel. 16 years ago, Assassin's Creed premiered on the 7th generation of home consoles. The third-person perspective game included the familiar mechanics of Ubisoft's Prince of Persia series, and initially the first Assassin's Creed would have been a sequel to 2003's The Sands of Time. Its working title was Prince of Persia: Assassins, and would have followed a female assassin protecting the life of a young prince of Persia. Creative director Patrice Désilets, however, saw a logical gap in the next Prince of Persia installment. The concept that a prince wasn't meant to be an action hero. He was waiting to become king. And an experience like Prince of Persia Assassins might be too much of the same we've already seen before. What ended up coming out of this exercise of shifting creative focus were inspirations for a video game built around a real organization, a brotherhood of assassins that existed roughly 1,000 years ago. Désilets focused on Hassan-i-Sabbah, who founded the Hashashin, a religious and military group during the Crusades that actually assassinated targets they viewed as enemies in their conquests. This concept formed the basis for the historical fiction that Assassin's Creed built its foundations on, as the real-life order lived in castles and settlements in modern-day Iran, a setting that Prince of Persia also explored. The Brotherhood of Assassins in video game form was slightly dramatized for effect, but its presentation and overall vibe absolutely hit a mark for believable accuracy. Ubisoft ensured that the settings and architecture felt authentic, even if human beings can't jump several stories into bales of hay. Hey, at this point we're not really questioning it, we just went along with it, okay? The Assassins did, however, mirror some of the believed facts about the Hashashin, as they were rumored to be highly acrobatic and commit high-profile assassinations in public. Assassin's Creed, however, wasn't just a game with fun historical references. It was a series that immediately understood characters, and the first game in the series focuses on Master Assassin, Altair ibn Ahad. Altair was the starting point for a profile that many assassins would represent throughout the game's protagonists. He was orphaned at a young age, but his family had been involved with the Assassins since his birth. It was the only life he ever knew, and despite these humble origins, he was brash, overly confident, and broke the core tenets of the Assassin's Creed. Oh hey, that's the name of the thing. Now, the Assassin's Creed is fairly straightforward. It states to stay your blade from the flesh of an innocent, hide in plain sight, be one with the crowd, and finally, never compromise the Brotherhood. Unfortunately for Altair, he would break every tenet of the creed within the first 15 minutes of the game. But we're not here to necessarily shame him or blow the entire plot of the first game in the series. Instead, it's important to know that Altair's journey is one of redemption, as he shows considerable character growth across the events of Assassin's Creed, threads of which would carry into the next main entries. Admittedly, Assassin's Creed wasn't a perfect game, but Assassin's Creed 2 set out to address the majority of those problems. While many took issue with the wooden performance of Altair's voice acting, its core story about a mysterious artifact, an Apple of Eden, laid the groundwork that formed the game's biggest mysteries. Part of that mystery involved Altair's modern-day counterpart, Desmond Miles. Desmond was a bartender thrust into the 1,000 years conflict between the Assassins and their sworn enemies, the Knights Templar. The modern-day Templar used hundreds of years to develop technology to retrieve memories from their historical ancestors. All they needed to access memories of past figures was the blood of their living descendants, and Desmond's story helps to rediscover the lost history of Altair, and the eventual poster boy of the franchise, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. Now, for reasons both good and bad, this is where the Assassin's Creed problem begins to form. Ezio Auditore's introduction into the series immediately flipped the young franchise on its head. Like Altair before him, he also knew tragedy at a young age, but ultimately Ezio has no clue about the Assassin Brotherhood. His story, however, focuses less around a redemption arc at first, and instead is about seeking revenge and justice for his family, who were murdered in a conspiracy between the Pazzi and Medici families of Florence, Italy. Ezio's journey in many ways righted the wrongs from Assassin's Creed, as gameplay was considerably improved, but so were the many monotonous tasks and incredibly vanilla quests of the original. Not only were the missions at hand far more varied than Altair's adventure, but the settings within Renaissance Italy were jaw-dropping at the time, offering a peek into one of the most romanticized eras in human history. A backdrop that Epic also led us down Ezio's personal story, a journey that began with his birth and would eventually extend into his retirement across 3 games and 3 short films. The problem, however, that I've debated for many years wasn't that we focused on Ezio for too long. If anything, his extended trilogy of games fleshed out his incredibly charismatic persona and weaved his character into many relevant struggles during Renaissance Italy. He seamlessly fit into historical fiction, as his story closely aligns with the very real Borgia family's rise to power during this era. Ezio's performance was further made impactful by actor Roger Craig Smith. And yes, I have had a massive man crush on the character based on just how cool he was, and want to be like him. Women desperately want him. And I also kind of desperately wanted him too. On the back of Roger's epic performance, Ezio's character was a complete experience, and gave gamers something epic to invest in over several years. In truly cinematic fashion, Altair and Ezio's stories come together during the 4th game in the series, Assassin's Creed Revelations. The mysterious artifact discovered during Altair's time allows our heroes to communicate across hundreds of years, and the culmination of these events is truly beautiful. Its execution is near perfection, and in my many years of gaming it made my eyes very sweaty. Okay fine, I cried, alright? For me, this is the single point where my fractured experiences with Assassin's Creed began to populate, and that's even while staying faithful by playing almost every game in the series after this until Assassin's Creed Origins. The issue I began to take with the series' direction, however, had less to do with the quality of the games, even though many complained about glitches that plagued several releases. No, my problem began to be the investment in characters across the series, as Altair and Ezio had opportunities for their entire lives to be explored, but very few after them got the same chance. For these first 2 assassins, their origins were detailed across 4 different games, creating attachment, building towards a satisfying conclusion of their story arcs, and a few tears. Sweaty eyes. Over the course of the first 4 years, though, I grew to seek out the next leg of the journey, as the earliest games in the franchise did an amazing job creating enough threads in the past to make its future timeline equally compelling, at least enough to keep the deepest mysteries of the series moving forward. While Assassin's Creed did spend a fair amount of time in the revolutionary periods of the American colonies and the French, the time frame might have connected these games, but the characters never carry the impact that Ezio and Altair were capable of. In Assassin's Creed 3, Connor Kenway gets more time to flesh out his childhood and early adult years, but it never reaches the same level of investment. The connection to the past that our first protagonist built created a mysticism that generations tend to create about each other, when stories told over time slowly become legends. Altair's discovery of the Apple of Eden in the first game is spoken of in a mysterious and fabled way across Ezio's story, as Ezio's father and uncle discover a codex written by him, and this keeps the plot moving across Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations. Past this point, however, Assassin's Creed really struggles to find a centerpiece to actually pull players towards. The endless struggle between Assassins and Templar are there, but from Assassin's Creed 3 to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, a sense of good and evil blurs considerably, as the Assassins were always thought to be the protectors of free will. But over time, the American colonial counterparts were shown to commit horrible mistakes, costing people their lives. To further compound the issue, Ezio's 3-game journey would not be attempted ever again. Standalone titles would feature a character only for the next entry to move on from them. And while Assassin's Creed 3, 4, and Rogue had interesting protagonists from the Kenway family, after a while these one-shot experiences just never came close to creating that same sense of attachment. Although Edward Kenway's sun-bleached hair and rugged good looks made for a great game, I don't like how I feel looking at him. Let's just get back on point. The opportunity to invest into a payoff for Ezio and Altair began to overshadow every subsequent entry for me in the series, and while I generally liked most of these games, the emotional payoff of Revelations never happened for me ever again. Assassin's Creed 4 did come close, but it was really just because a ton of people died. It wasn't pleasant. The compounded effect of a lack of emotional investment eroded my love for the franchise. And when Origins soft rebooted the series, I couldn't have possibly felt farther away from the demographics Ubisoft had initially focused on. The RPG elements that Origins would adopt didn't really land for me either, and it also featured a brand new combat system. However, this wasn't really my main gripe. The problem was that Assassin's Creed had gone through a new protagonist almost every year for the exception of Ezio, and the characters themselves either felt incomplete or pale in comparison to my favorite ones. The overarching issue is that you just didn't get a real chance to know them, and Ubisoft didn't seem to take much issue with starting over, even at times completely overlooking their own focus on the present-day struggles that were a core focus for almost a decade. The balancing act between the past and present was almost non-existent after Assassin's Creed 4, and by this point Desmond Miles had died, although somehow he'd returned just kind of like Emperor Palpatine, albeit in a different form. By the time the RPG era of Assassin's Creed took flight, however, it was pretty clear to me that I had either aged out of the property or that these games were just made for someone else. Truth is, 10 years with a franchise is a long time, and while change is inevitable for intellectual properties to stay relevant, Assassin's Creed could have, and in my opinion, should have found more ways to build bridges between its characters. The Kenway Saga actually didn't do a bad job of this, but Ubisoft intentionally shifted Assassin's Creed from a sense of right and wrong to a morally gray ideology that was confusing for several entries. Once again, this could be my fault, but I chose to exit the series at Origins because it was the only conclusion I could really come to. By this point, I'd also invested in other series like Borderlands, Far Cry, and numerous franchises under Telltale Games. Ubisoft's attempts to create annual entries clearly began to take a toll, and the narrative capabilities of other studios began to considerably become a level playing field after Assassin's Creed first premiered. In time, it also became quite clear that Assassin's Creed might also suffer from the fact that Patrice Désilets, who we mentioned earlier, left Ubisoft after Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and the overall direction of the plot absolutely lost consistency once that happened. Désilets only thought that the franchise should last for 3 games. Clearly he didn't get his way, which led to his resignation. Now, I won't provide any judgment for the RPG era of the franchise that includes Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, as I haven't really explored these titles fully and know that they have their own legions of dedicated fans and players. After reading some of their plot points, because frankly it's just hard to avoid spoilers, the narrative storytelling appears to have improved somewhat. But for me, it's the concept that we're growing ever farther away from the plot threads that initially pulled me into the series. However, with the upcoming Assassin's Creed Nexus VR game, Ubisoft has finally changed its mind on revisiting past characters, unearthing new stories for Ezio and Connor, as well as Cassandra from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. At minimum, my curiosity is piqued, but I'm not sure if fully investing in the series and making a return is something that I actually want to be doing. But what about you? Did you continue playing Assassin's Creed throughout the last 16 years? Or did you leave the franchise at some point like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for listening. Join us for more pop culture content on this channel. And until next time, keep on dissecting.